At 82, I've gained valuable life experiences, but one decision deeply regrets moving into a nursing home. Initially, it appeared like the wisest choice. My family assured me of the care and comfort I'd need, and I believed them. However, upon arrival, I discovered a stark contrast to my expectations. Many of you may be contemplating this option for yourself or a loved one. Perhaps you perceive it as the safest choice or believe it simplifies life. Before making such a significant step, I want to share 6 crucial insights. I wish someone had shared these truths with me before my move, as life in a nursing home profoundly impacts every aspect of your existence. Once you enter, exiting becomes more complex than anticipated. Stay with me until the end, as some of these revelations may surprise you. If you know someone considering a nursing home, this video might provide the necessary guidance before making a life-altering decision. Now, let's begin. Regret number 1, losing my independence. The most significant shock after moving into a nursing home wasn't the small room, rigid meal times, or unfamiliar faces. It was the realization that I had relinquished control over my life. Before my move, I had established routines. I determined my wake-up time, meal preferences, and daily activities. I could take walks whenever I pleased, cook my own meals, or simply relax in my preferred chair with a book. However, within the nursing home, I quickly realized that my time was no longer mine. Everything operated on a schedule that wasn't aligned with my preferences. Breakfast was served at a fixed time, even if I wasn't hungry. Lights out occurred at a specific hour, regardless of my readiness for bed. Taking a walk outside might require permission, and you'd likely have to wait for someone to assist you. Even simple decisions like choosing what to eat or wear felt like privileges rather than basic choices. I vividly recall my first week in this unfamiliar place. I awoke in a bed that felt strangely alien to me. As I sat up, stretched, and reached for the book I had cherished at home, a sudden realization struck me this wasn't my sanctuary. My beloved books, my cherished favorite chair, and the little comforts I had diligently collected over the years were nowhere to be found. In their place stood sterile walls, an unfamiliar bed, and an unsettling feeling that I had lost control over my own life. The most challenging aspect was the realization that once you relinquish your independence, reclaiming it becomes almost an insurmountable task. You adapt because it's the only way forward. You cease to argue when they dictate your dinner choices. You stop requesting walks whenever you desire. You learn to conform to their system, but in doing so, you gradually begin to lose yourself. If you're contemplating a move to a nursing home, I implore you to reflect on whether you're prepared to relinquish the small freedoms that make life truly yours. Because once those freedoms are gone, you'll find yourself yearning for them more profoundly than you could ever imagine. Regret and a sense of being forgotten are among the hardest truths to confront when you move into a nursing home. One of the most disheartening realities is the realization that the world outside continues to move forward without you. When I first arrived, my family reassured me that they would visit me frequently. I believed them, and in the initial stages, they kept their promise. My daughter would come by once a week, and my grandchildren would visit on weekends. For a brief period, it felt like I still had a connection to my former life. However, as the months passed, the visits became less frequent. My daughter started calling instead of coming, and my grandchildren became engrossed in school and work. Holidays proved to be the most challenging. Everyone promised to visit, but somehow, plans always fell through at the last minute. Suddenly, I found myself sitting alone in a common room, watching other residents stare at the door, hoping that today would be the day someone would remember them. It wasn't that my family had stopped loving me. Life simply got in the way. When you're not present every day, it's easy for people to assume that you're coping well, that you're adjusting, and that you don't require as much attention. But the reality is, the longer you reside in a nursing home, the more likely it becomes for people to forget just how much you still require their support. I recall an evening when I was sitting in my room, holding my phone, contemplating whether to call my son. I was hesitant to burden him with my presence, fearing that it might remind him of my existence and the possibility of a visit that might never materialize. Consequently, I put the phone down. And that's when it struck me this was my new reality. I found myself observing the days pass, yearning for someone to remember to include me in their lives. If you're contemplating moving into a nursing home, I urge you to reflect on whether you're prepared for the loneliness that awaits. Despite the unwavering love of your family, once you're out of sight, it's easier than you might think to become invisible. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please leave a comment on the second number below to let me know that you're here. Additionally, if you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend subscribing and turning on the bell to ensure you don't miss any future videos. Now, let's move forward. Regret number 3, losing my sense of purpose. When I moved into the nursing home, I mistakenly believed that it was merely a change in my living environment. I failed to comprehend that it was also a shift in my reason for existence. At home, I had responsibilities, routines, hobbies, and a purposeful reason to rise each morning. Even the seemingly insignificant tasks, such as watering the plants, brewing my coffee, and tidying up my space, provided me with a sense of fulfillment. However, in the nursing home, these daily rituals vanished. Meals were prepared for me, cleaning was done by others, and the plants, once mine to care for, were no longer under my responsibility. Initially, I convinced myself that this would be a welcome respite, no more chores, no more responsibilities, just rest. However, after a few weeks, I realized that something was amiss. The days felt elongated and stretched out, devoid of anything to occupy my time except waiting. I observed this phenomenon in other residents as well. Individuals who had once radiated energy were now confined to sitting, staring, and passively waiting for time to elapse. There was an 84-year-old man named George who had dedicated his entire life to carpentry. At home, he was always tinkering with things, building small projects in his garage. But here, there were no tools, no projects, nothing to keep him occupied. I watched as he gradually withdrew his strong, skilled hands, now idle in his lap. "I feel useless," he confided in me one day. And I understood his sentiment perfectly. When you lose something to care for, something to work toward, life loses its meaning. Your mind slows down, and your body follows suit. Soon, you feel like just another resident in a place where time passes, but nothing truly changes. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself what gives your life purpose. Because once you move in, finding purpose isn't as simple as filling your time. It's about fighting to hold on to the things that make you feel alive. Regret 4, declining health faster than expected. Before I moved into a nursing home, I was in good health for my age. I wasn't running marathons, but I could still take care of myself. I went for walks, cooked my own meals, and had my own routines that kept me active. Grocery shopping, morning stretches, and even walking around the house to strengthen my legs were all part of my routine. But once I moved in, everything changed. Initially, it seemed like I was simply taking it easy. Meals were delivered to me, and I no longer had to stand in the kitchen to cook. If I needed something, I could simply press a button, and someone would come to assist me. However, I failed to realize that the less I engaged in self-care, the weaker I became. My movement decreased, and my legs became stiffer. I sat more than I used to, and before I knew it, getting up from a chair became a chore. The muscles I had diligently maintained were disappearing at an alarming rate. And it wasn't just me. I witnessed this happening to others as well. People who had once walked independently were now relying on wheelchairs. Those who had once been independent now needed assistance with tasks they had never struggled with before. The more help we received, the more dependent we seemed to become. I recall my neighbor, Alice, an 81-year-old Japanese woman who was lively when she first arrived. She used to take daily walks around the facility, adamantly insisting that she wouldn't slow down simply because of her age. However, after a few months, I noticed a decline in her walking frequency. Subsequently, she started using a walker and then a wheelchair. One day, she looked at me and expressed, "I don't know when it happened, but I feel like I've aged 10 years in just a few months." And that's precisely what it felt like. When you cease using your body, you begin to lose it. In a nursing home, where everything is designed to facilitate ease, it's easy to forget that movement isn't solely about convenience. It's essential for survival. If I had been aware of the rapid decline in my strength, I would have fought harder to maintain movement, stay active, and push myself even when I felt unmotivated. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, will you still have the motivation to keep your body strong when everything is set up to make life effortless? Because once you slow down, getting back up becomes more challenging than you might think. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment on the fourth point below to let me know you're here. Additionally, if you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend subscribing and turning on the bell to ensure you don't miss any future videos. Your support helps us continue creating informative and inspiring content. Now, let's move forward. I'm regret 5, the loss of privacy and dignity. One aspect I didn't fully consider before moving into a nursing home was the extent of privacy I would lose. At home, I had my own space, the freedom to close my bedroom door, sit in silence if I desired, and do things on my own terms. However, in a nursing home, privacy becomes a luxury that may not always be readily available. From the moment I arrived, I felt like I was constantly under surveillance, with staff members entering and exiting my room, scheduled room checks, and shared spaces where I rarely had solitude. Even simple tasks like getting dressed or using the bathroom often required assistance. I understand they were doing their jobs, but it's challenging to accept help for activities you've done independently your entire life. I vividly recall my first week grappling with the idea of needing permission for things I once did without a second thought. Wanting to take a shower, you might have to wait until someone was available to help. Need to use the restroom. Sometimes pressing the call button meant enduring a longer wait than desired. Even meal choices were limited. If you didn't like what was on the menu that day, well, tough luck. And then there was the issue of roommates. Not everyone gets a private room, and sharing a space with someone you didn't choose can be frustrating. I was fortunate to have a kind roommate, but I heard stories from others who weren't so lucky. Some had roommates who were loud, unclean, or even had cognitive issues that made sleep nearly impossible. Regardless of how much effort you put into making your room feel like home, it's never truly yours. Losing dignity is a difficult process, and I didn't realize how much of mine I'd have to relinquish until I was already there. When people knock, but don't always wait for an answer before entering, when you're spoken to like a patient rather than a person, when your daily routines are dictated by a schedule you didn't create, it profoundly affects your sense of self. You start feeling less like yourself and more like just another name on a list. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you prepared to relinquish the privacy and control you've cherished your entire life? Because once it's gone, it becomes challenging to regain it. Regret 6. Realizing it's harder to leave than you anticipate. When I first moved into the nursing home, I convinced myself it was temporary. I thought I'd give it a try, observe how things went, and if I didn't like it, I could always leave. However, I failed to comprehend the immense difficulty of exiting once I was already there. Initially, it seemed straightforward. If I hadn't liked it, I'd simply return home. However, home had changed irrevocably. My house stood empty, and maintaining it from afar became arduous. My children had already begun making changes, selling things they believed I wouldn't require. Even contemplating renting out the place, when I suggested returning, they hesitated. "Are you certain you can manage on your own? Wouldn't it be safer to remain? We genuinely want what's best for you." Then there was the issue of my physical decline. After months of living in a place where I didn't have to cook, clean, or even venture far, I had lost my strength. The independence I once cherished was slipping away, making the prospect of moving back home more daunting than I could have ever imagined. My confidence in my ability to live alone dwindled, and that fear held me captive. I encountered others who shared similar experiences. They had initially intended to stay in a nursing home for a brief period, only to realize that leaving wasn't as straightforward as they had anticipated. The longer they resided, the more challenging it became to adapt to life outside. Some individuals even lost the option entirely. Once their home was sold or their savings were depleted by the cost of care, there was no turning back. This aspect is often overlooked. Moving in feels like a reversible decision, but for most people it isn't. The nursing home gradually becomes your entire world, and before you know it, the life you once knew outside feels like a distant memory. If you're contemplating a nursing home, consider the possibility that once you enter, leaving might not be as simple as you anticipate. Once you settle in, the barriers to leaving, whether financial, physical, or emotional, can become more formidable than you anticipate. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment on the 6th video below to let me know you're here. Additionally, if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend subscribing and turning on the bell to ensure you don't miss any future videos. Your support enables us to persist in creating valuable content to inform and inspire you. Final thoughts. Reflecting on my journey, I don't regret aging, but I do regret believing that a nursing home was my sole option. I entered expecting comfort, safety, and an enhanced quality of life. However, I discovered a world that gradually eroded my independence, privacy, purpose, and even my sense of self. Does this imply that all nursing homes are inherently negative? Not necessarily. Some individuals genuinely require the level of care they provide. Nevertheless, before making such a decision, consider the sacrifices you'll be making. Once you move in, life will undergo a profound transformation. If I had the opportunity to relive my experience, I would have fought more ardently to remain in my own home, explored alternative avenues for assistance without compromising my freedom, and ensured that I genuinely required the care before making such a permanent move. If you're currently facing this decision, I encourage you to take the time to reflect on whether this truly aligns with your best interests, or if it merely appears the most convenient option at present. Remember the life you have today, your routines, your independence, and your choices are worth cherishing and holding onto for as long as possible. Thank you for joining us today. We value your feedback and would be delighted to hear from you. Please leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today and how you intend to apply it in your life. Your thoughts are of utmost importance to us, so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments provides us with immense motivation and encouragement. If you found this video informative and beneficial, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it. Your support is instrumental in our continued efforts to create valuable content that informs and inspires you. Thank you for watching, and we eagerly anticipate seeing you in our next video.